So Epic's been causing quite a bit of ruckus over the past few months because of the way they've been handling their Epic Games Store launcher. They have sort of been throwing money around, signing exclusivity deals, most of them timed, but a few of them might be permanent down the line. So games like Metro Exodus, Phoenix Point, Outer Worlds, Borderlands 3 we have heard plenty about. More recently, Epic bought out the Rocket League developers, so Rocket League might be removed from Steam and be sold on Epic. Yeah, it's this whole shebang that's raised quite a bit of ruckus, that's caused quite a bit of controversy, and it's not going to stop. Epic is doubling, tripling down on this business strategy despite all the dissent. And most recently, they went out of their way to secure a game called Outer Wilds. Not to be confused with Outer Worlds, this is another separate indie game, and from what I can tell, it seems to be this space exploration type of experience. It actually looks pretty interesting. There's some gameplay footage out there already. It kind of reminds me of No Man's Sky, but a little more on the indie side. Obviously, the budget seems to be a bit smaller. But the way the developers described it on their Fig page is that it's sort of this amalgam of Myst, Kerbal Space Program, and Majora's Mask. Definitely looks and sounds interesting overall. It's certainly gotten a cult following if they're to be believed. According to this excerpt right here, there's an alpha build for the game out there right now that's gotten over 90,000 downloads, which is not bad at all for an up-and-coming indie game. Now, I wish I could say that reception for the game has remained relatively positive, but lately it's taken a turn for the worse because of the recent announcement that the game would in fact be going Epic exclusive. So if you go to the game's crowdfunding page on Fig and check out the latest update, the developers announced the Epic exclusivity deal with a post that reads as follows. Outer Wilds will first be released on Xbox One and on PC via the Epic Game Store, with additional platforms coming later. Rest assured that we read all of your comments and our goal is to bring the game to your preferred platform as quickly as possible. We will keep you up to date with the latest info here. Throughout the development of the game, we have welcomed helpful partnerships with Annapurna Interactive, Xbox, and Epic to support us and keep our small studio running long enough to ship the game at the level of quality that it is today. Each of these partnerships has enabled us to make the game better and more accessible for everyone who will play it. We greatly appreciate the support that you have given us over the years, even when we weren't able to share all of the details going on behind the scenes. We'll share an update on the release date soon. We thank you for sticking with us and we look forward to seeing you play Outer Wilds. Reactions to this announcement is about what you would expect. There's certainly been a lot of negativity. There's some people who don't care about the whole launchers thing. They don't mind going Epic or Steam, either or. But plenty of others are very sort of dead set on using Steam because it does offer superior and a wider array of features compared to Epic. So those people have been pretty vocal. If you scroll through the backers' comments on this page, you will see that many of them are not happy at all. And an important bit of context with this game is that it was crowdfunded many years ago. Back in September 17th, 2015, it reached the goal of accumulating $125,000. It went a little bit over. And among the promises that were made can be found etched in this crowdfunding page, which reads as follows. We are going to get it to as many people's hands as possible. Currently, we're planning to release Outer Wilds on PC, Mac, and Linux through Steam next year. But our dream is to bring it to new platforms in as many languages as possible, and we need everyone's help to make that happen. It goes without saying that many people backed this project under the pretense that they would be able to secure a Steam copy of the game, this platform that they've been using for a long time. But out of the blue, all of that changes with this announcement, 3.5 years later, which states that they're now confining this game to Epic, an inferior launcher, for an indefinite amount of time. And that's another thing. They haven't announced how long this game would be Epic exclusive. Other titles have announced, 6 months, 1 year. We don't know for Outer Wilds how long it'll stay Epic exclusive, and that's also particularly disconcerting, though I'm assuming we'll get details on that in the not-so-distant future. But either way, regardless of if it's 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever, backers feel betrayed because this isn't what they were promised. I'm not saying everyone's pissed, some people legitimately don't care, but Plenty of others do. They don't like Epic's business model. They don't want to be complacent to that. Plus, they genuinely enjoy Steam's wide array of features, from cloud saves to achievements to user profiles, forums, user reviews, all these different things that are currently not available on the Epic Games Store. And people do like keeping all their games under one umbrella, under one store, in one launcher, just to keep everything organized. It's this convenience that they enjoy, and they like to have the choice of being able to partake in that if they so desire. And that's what Epic has lately been taking away from consumers: choice. I've said this before, but Epic isn't competing by offering compelling benefits. They're competing by inconveniencing consumers through restrictions. Some of the features that Epic is missing can be pretty detrimental to certain users too. For example, one thing that this game promised was Linux support, and Steam does support Linux, but currently Epic Store does not officially at least. And there are people in the comment section of this crowdfunding page saying that they backed this game to play it on Linux. That's no longer going to happen, so naturally they're pretty pissed, because now they're going to have to wait a couple months or a year or whatever so they can play the game on Linux. And look, when you're dealing with crowdfunding, when you're promising backers this and that for money, you have to adhere to that. It is unacceptable that midway through development you screw the people who supported you initially, the people who propped your game up, who allowed this game to exist. Now, look, don't get me wrong, I understand that in this particular case, these are indie developers, this is an indie game. They could actually use the money from Epic. They could use the cash infusion. We aren't dealing with Borderlands 3 here, which is backed by Take-Two, this massive conglomerate, this massive publisher. Borderlands 3 is this major franchise that's gonna sell millions of copies. It's gonna do well regardless of whether it goes Epic exclusive or not. That cash infusion wasn't needed. Same thing goes for other AAA games who have signed on for Epic exclusivity. Whatever cash infusion they're getting, they're not doing it for survival. They're not doing it because they need that money. They're doing it because they want to make all the money they can make, not just enough money, and they're willing to just piss off certain crowds to do that, to that end. Outer Wilds, on the other hand, it's probably safe to assume that the developers have to constantly wrestle with finances. They raised $126,000, which at a glance seems like a lot of money, but for game development, that's really not that much when you think about it. So I get it. I get that they need the money. I get that the higher revenue cut is lucrative. I get that the cash infusion from Epic might really come in handy. But that still doesn't justify that they were so uncommunicative with their initial supporters, the backers, the crowdfunders. I think this could have been mitigated a lot if the developers consulted with the backers, if they would have given backers the heads up and said, hey, what do you think if we do Epic exclusivity? It would help us with this, this, and that. We actually need the money. It'll help us make the game better on this and that front. If they just went out of their way to communicate and explain things, I feel like people would have said, it's not ideal, but I understand, okay. But what happened instead was that there was no communication whatsoever. It kind of feels like the developers went behind backers' back. It feels like they engaged in subterfuge. It didn't feel like they respected the backers' wishes and the promises they were made. And under any circumstances, that just doesn't feel right. It feels exploitative. It feels like developers are using crowdfunders as a loan that can then be discarded when something better comes along. And this isn't the first time something like this has happened. You may recall that Phoenix Point faced similar backlash. Phoenix Point is also an indie game, and this one's actually self-published. And yes, they can use the money, but they crowdfunded the game with the promise that people who chose Steam as their platform of choice would be getting a key for that particular launcher and platform. But out of the blue, they backed away from their word, and people naturally felt betrayed. Despite people understanding the need for financial stability, there still has to be a back and forth between the backers and the developers. What ultimately got Phoenix Point developers into trouble was this sense of them no longer deeming the initial backers important, like they are no longer a priority. And the same thing's going on with Outer Wilds now. And users on Reddit in particular have been adamantly expressing their dissent towards all this. One user, for example, explained their sentiments in the following post, which reads as follows. I understand the publisher made this deal and not the dev team, and I understand understand money is a driving force behind the decision. However, I feel this is unethical for crowdfunding campaigns. I didn't want to support the game so I could play it months after release on the platform the campaign originally promoted. If I was told my contribution meant I could play the game eventually, I would not have pledged. I do not wish to support the Epic Store at this time. It's feature incomplete, it's a potential privacy risk, and unfortunately this means I can't support the Outer Wilds team, as much as I believe in the project and am excited to see how far it has come. Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable and understandable sentiment, one that was very well and respectfully put, I might add. And look, while there's no denying that Epic is facilitating this crap, it is ultimately up to publishers and developers to actually say yes and sign the deal. Now, in this case, I don't know if it was the developers or the publishers who decided to go for the deal, if they both agreed on this. Who knows what happened behind the scenes? Again, they're just very uncommunicative about the decision-making process. Either way, the bottom line is this: if you're going to crowdfund a game, if you're going to use that as the foundation to finance your game, don't fuck your backers down the line. That's just a shitty thing to do. At the very least, keep your word to your backers. Maybe have all the backers get Steam codes while everyone else gets Epic codes. At the very least, consult with your backers and have an exchange. Tell them what's going on and see what kind of sort of middle ground you guys can come up with. That's the least developers who crowdfund their games owe their backers, since they're the supporters who are helping the game get off the ground. If you're gonna crowdfund your game, don't treat your backers as loans that you can then cast aside. Treat them as your first and most important and most loyal customers. Anyway, these are one-man sentiments on the whole situation. I'd love to hear what your take is on Outer Wilds going Epic exclusive in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. To be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.